Exit. Exit. Distort. Spitting image. Photo library. Photo CD. Photo CD. Photo CD. Photo library. Kate Adie, Jeffrey Archer, David Bellamy, Richard Branson, John Cleese, John Cole, Les Dawson,
Sir Robin Day, Dame Vera Lynn, Gloria Hunniford, Dalai Lama, Bill Owen,
Esther Ranson, Mary Whitehouse,
Bill Owen, Dalai Lama, Gloria Hunniford, Dame Vera Lynn, Sir Robin Day,
Les Dawson, John Cole, John Cleese. Distort. Spitting image. David Stoughton caricaturing.
Here we have John Cleese, and as with all caricatures, we start with a pencil outline. My first impressions are this guy's got a very long face. He's also got a big chin, so I want to sort of establish the mouth around about here. And his nose is quite short. I also see his eyes as being very close together, and this is also strengthened by the fact that this comes in very narrow here. Right, so I'm going to go with the darker pencil now. He's got a very tiny mouth with no lips. He has actually a very long neck, so I'm just going to change this down here and put the shirt in lower down. And just a bit of shading just to show a bit of form. Usually we do several drawings of the person before it really starts to work, Obviously these are first impressions. Now here we have John Major, and as before I'm going to block it out in pencil. Again, he has a sort of a long face, but he also has quite wide eyes, so I want to just get the kind of balance right between the sort of long face and the sort of position of the eyes. He's very upright, his head. In profile it actually juts forward from his neck, so I just want to get a feeling of that here. I actually know that from another photograph. Right, so we're going with the dark now. Just see some of his teeth in the mouth. Very well kept little hairstyle. Don't want to make it too wild. I'm saving the eyes to last because the eyes actually are the most fun part of any face, and it's usually the point in which the face comes together. So, and he's got a permanent smile in his eyes, which can just help by putting this little line under here. Some people you can caricature the glasses while making them really huge, but I think with Major you have to keep them slightly controlled. Just finishing off now with a bit of shading. All the decisions have been made. Just nice with a drawing to put some shading in and show a bit of form. Here we have Her Majesty the Queen. Similarly, I'm going to rough it out, block it out in pencil. The eyes are closer together, again because this part of the face comes in, and these very sort of rounded eyebrows. Obviously, at Spitting Image we have to draw with 3 dimensions in mind, because the drawings have to be interpreted into models. I can start with the darker pencil. And obviously with puppets the mouth is the most mobile part of the face, so we try and make the mouths as large as we possibly can without destroying the caricature likeness. But she is one of our most successful puppets. You shouldn't depend on age lines in a face. They add character, but if you get the right shapes initially, then you can see the likeness before you put any age lines in. I'm just taking my time with her because one has respect for royalty.
David Stoughton caricaturing. History of caricature.
I'm not an expert on the history of caricature, I'm an enthusiast. So before we go any further, here's a quick definition from the Oxford Dictionary. Caricature, noun. 1. In art, grotesque or ludicrous representation of persons or things by exaggeration of their most characteristic and striking features. 2. A portrait or other artistic representation in which the characteristic features of the original are exaggerated with ludicrous effect. Caricature verb, to make a grotesque likeness of. 2. To burlesque. The caricaturist is the anarchist of the visual arts. We all end up with the face we deserve. For example, if you take a look at a photograph of Mrs. Thatcher, she looks like a typical Anglo-Saxon suburban housewife. The spitting image Mrs. Thatcher bears very little visual resemblance to her in reality, but it tells you quite a lot about the character of the ex-Prime Minister. Or if we look at John Major, we see a rather hesitant, pleasant, not unattractive middle-aged male. But when we see the spitting image puppet of John Major, we see a character about as interesting as a single coat of a grey emulsion, and in fact, the puppet appears grey at all times. Both of these interpretations must contain a tiny germ of truth, otherwise we'd all be wasting our time, and in my case, the viewers would simply not recognise the puppets. It's this recognition factor that is crucial. We can only truly appreciate the quality of a caricature when we compare it with the original person. And when we see the victim pictured on television or in a newspaper, his or her image becomes linked inseparably in our own minds with the caricature. What the caricaturist has done is to make us take a closer look at the victim. And if he succeeds, we then begin to see the victim as a ridiculous creature. And after that, there's not really a lot the poor victim can do. He wears his own caricature wherever he goes, and he or she often begins to resemble the caricature more and more. I'm told that the art of caricature was invented by Annibal and Agostino Carracci towards the end of the 16th century. They are said to have drawn friends and enemies as animals, and we can think of modern equivalents. The actual word caricature first came into use in the mid-18th century, when the art itself was already well into its stride. Caricature is generally drawn to make a statement, to be public and hopefully popular. The print medium enables it to be bold, and with spitting image puppets, television does the same job. Successful imagery gets recycled by each new generation of caricaturists, and really successful caricatures, I'm afraid, have sometimes become our only record of the people from the past. For instance, it's hard to imagine George III, or Pitt, or Fox, or Bonaparte portrayed by anyone other than James Gilray. In the same way, when people think of Hitler, they often think of him as portrayed by David Lowe. So maybe one day Mrs. Thatcher will become one with her puppet.
History of Caricature slideshow. James Gilray, 1756 to 1815. Temperance enjoying a frugal meal, 1792. George III and his wife Queen Charlotte. Gilray. Tiddy Doll, the great French gingerbread maker, 1806. Alias Bonaparte. Gilray. The Plum Pudding in Danger, 1805. Pitt and Bonaparte divide up the world between them. George Cruikshank, 1792 to 1878. Royal Hobbies or the Hertfordshire Cockhorse, 1819. Prince Regent and his mistress Lady Hertford enjoying a little canter. Charles Philippon. Louis Philippe turns into a pear. 4 drawings dated 1831. After Cruikshank, the art of caricature passed to France. The French word for pear is also slang for fathead. Honoré Daumier, important malicieux de Podena, mid-19th century. Daumier, important personnage Félix Barthes, mid-19th century. Gustave Doré, 1832 to 1883. The Last Gallop Before Supper, mid-19th century. Tremendous excitement. Doré. A distinguished soirée of amateurs, music lovers every one, mid-19th century. Martin Brothers. Who's this? It's just a face, but a brilliant grotesque in ceramics, turn of century. L'Assiette au Beurre, 1901 to 1912. Edward VII as a barrel of English ale, 1901, by Jean Weber. L'assiette. Edward VII as Britannia's arse. L'assiette. The motor car. Cover illustration by Veluk. L'assiette. Les Médecins. Cover by Abel Fèvre, 1902. L'assiette. Prince of Saxony by Camara, 1903. Or is this the Duke of Edinburgh? L'assiette. Le Capitalisme, June 1907, by Galantara. Olaf Gulbrandsen, 1873 to 1958. George Brandis, from Simplicissimus, same period as L'assiette. David Lowe. Hitler, all blown up and nowhere to go. June 26, 1933. Al Hirschfeld, Some Like It Hot, 1959. Ralph Steadman, born 1936. Kissinger, 1974. Ricord and Rampal, from their book Animals Who Govern Us, 1986. The Queen as a Mare. Ricord and Rampal, Ronald Reagan as a rooster. Gilray. The Duchess's little shoe yielding to the magnitude of the Duke's foot. This is a caricature in 1792 of the Duke and Duchess of York. Luck and Flaw. The Duchess's little shoe yielding to the magnitude of the Duke's foot on the occasion of the Duke and Duchess of York's engagement. Here's Jack! Spitting Image. Spitting Image. The Dunsand future king. History of Spitting Image.
I started out drawing caricatures for print, just like the examples you've seen. At the time in the early 60s I had some formidable competition. As if Gerald Scarfe and Ralph Steadman weren't enough, the massed ranks of photographers were already moving in on the areas traditionally occupied by caricaturists and illustrators. So when the mass circulation colour magazines came along, I began instead to make three-dimensional caricatures out of plasticine, and I enlisted the help of photographers to make these images. They were moderately successful, but they really came into their own around the time of President Nixon's Watergate scandal. It was then that I went into partnership with fellow caricaturist Peter Fluck, just to keep up with the demand. The partnership helped both of us to increase our scope. By the early 80s, having illustrated for dozens of newspapers and magazines, we decided we would try to move our work from print to the small screen. The caricatures were three-dimensional, so we reckoned we were halfway to puppets. How wrong can you get? 2 years later, we finally made the pilot program for Spitting Image, and then there were 2 series before it settled down to become the show that we see on television today. I'll spare you the nightmarish details of our struggle to create the show. Let's just say that by the end of it, we finally had one solid achievement under our belts. We'd succeeded in moving topical caricature from the newspaper to the television. It had to be topical, as the best caricature always is, and in getting the show to work, we made some very unexpected discoveries. 1. Television flattens your caricature, so the noses have to be even bigger and longer. 2. All the print caricatures were modelled to be photographed from one angle, whereas the trick with television is to model the shape of the victim's head. Concentrating on the eyes, nose and mouth is not enough. It's true to say that a baby recognises its mum by the shape of her head, not by her features. 3. On an off day when you've failed totally to create a convincing puppet, you can always fall back on the skills of the voice artist, whereas in print, all you can do is write George Bush with an arrow pointing to your unrecognisable scribble.
How to carry.
We're often asked where we start with a caricature. Here are a few basic steps to enable you to find a way into the face. All you need, of course, is a pencil and paper and as much photographic reference of your victim as you can lay your hands on. The first step is to think of the face as a simple shape. Can it be reduced to a geometric shape, for example? Frank Sinatra, as we see him today, is very circular. Joan Collins, on the other hand, could be seen as a very triangular shape, whereas Bruce Forsyth is very much more rectangular shape. Once you've established the basic shape of the face, the next step is to plot the features within it. Is the distance above the eyes larger than the distance below them? Is the mouth high in the face? Perhaps it's low in the face. Now that you've got a basic map of the face, the next stage is to consider the features themselves. Are the eyes large or small? Are they lidded or unlidded? Perhaps the face has an outstanding feature. Do they have massive ears like Prince Charles? Or a massive nose like, well, Prince Charles? The fourth and final step is to add character to the face. What personality traits can be incorporated into the caricature? What is their archetypal expression? How do they carry themselves? Are they a boffin, a sex symbol, or even a drunk? The character that you add to your face can change the caricature entirely. We remade Thatcher many times in the last 8 years as her public persona became more demonic. Some people are harder to do than others. Pretty women are particularly tricky. We've tried at least 10 different versions of Lady Di. Others are a real gift. Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber is already a walking caricature. There is no such thing as a right or wrong caricature. The most important thing is that it's instantly recognisable. 2 different approaches and styles can give 2 equally successful caricatures. Remember, be brave, have fun, good luck.
Photo library. Distort. Help. Exit.